1 in 5 Canadians will experience a mental health challenge at some point in their lives.
Mental illness is one's inability to cope with those life stressors.
It's not a judgment of character, it's not a failure in character, it's a failure in chemistry.
It's mind-boggling some days, because sometimes I forget how incredibly ill I was.
And that's pretty much where the drug play kind of came in to numb everything around me.
Where I am in life right now is a huge transition point.
I needed to fix my life, fix my brain somehow, so I could integrate that into my daily life.
We're hardwired to live. Inside us, we want to live.
In sharing our stories, it seems to open a door to other people to share our stories.
Mental illness is one of the leading health problems within Canada right now. Mental illness is one's inability to cope with those life stressors. It affects a person's way of thinking, being, and behaving. Mental illness is one of those illnesses that people see as being weak. If you were diagnosed with a heart condition, people wouldn't think, oh, well, you're a weak person. No, you have an illness, and so it is with the mental illnesses as well. Anxiety and depression are the two major mental illnesses that affect so many Canadians. That's the tricky part with mental illness, because on the outside, a person can look very well physically, but on the inside, they're hurting terribly.
Where I am in life right now is a huge transition point. I'm a very busy professional. I mean professionally, I'm a chartered accountant as well as a lawyer, and I have practiced primarily in tax law. I grew up here in Calgary in the Northwest, went to good schools. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. Always did really well in school, lots and lots of extracurricular activities. I did my Bachelor of Commerce at the University of Calgary, and started working here in Calgary right out of my commerce degree, doing my CA. And yeah, I ended up really just integrating into a really good community, professional community here, found my niche, ended up working in a law firm as their controller, and interested in law, went back to law school and kind of restarted a career in law after about 10 years out from my commerce degree. So, you know, very kind of normal, stable kind of upbringing, and nothing really dramatic in terms of day-to-day life.
When I decided to get help, it was a life-changing moment for me, to say the least. First and foremost, I'm a father and a husband. I've been working in Calgary here for about 15 years, living in Calgary for 15 years, came from Winnipeg originally. Enjoy playing sports, playing hockey, just like most people. Wife and I really enjoy watching hockey, watching sports. We spend a lot of time with our daughter, doing different things. Like enjoy camping. We do a lot of camping in the summer. Also an artist on the side. Been doing that for quite a while. Sort of evolved into the type of artist I am now. I started sketching, but now it's more a little abstract, I guess. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
It's mind-boggling some days, because sometimes I forget how incredibly ill I was. I'm 28 years old, and currently I just finished my final practicum for my BSW, my Bachelor of Social Work degree. Me and my family immigrated to Canada, to Calgary specifically, when I was 4, so in 1992. We immigrated from El Salvador, and we didn't have much in the way of things or money, and sort of the usual struggle of immigrants in terms of integration into Canadian society were all things that we struggled with at school, with language and different cultural values and things like that. So I can't say that it was necessarily easy, but you know, my parents are really hardworking people, and they always did the best they could with what they had.
I think my future is looking brighter every day. I'm a business owner of a tattoo shop. Mainly done retail and all that other jazz before. Always seemed to manage to get into the managerial duties in record-breaking times. Generally, most of the time I'm shy. What people don't normally notice that anymore. I seem to have broken through it, but not very much. I have a husband, a cat, small town country girl living in the big city type deal.
When I was a teen, it really felt like there was no hope. I didn't want to get better at that point because I didn't understand that there was a better. I am a tattoo artist, a piercer, urban Viking, and a sappist. I like girls who like other girls. I always wanted to be a tattoo artist. I think my father has pictures of me drawing on myself at like the age of 3 or 4, and when I figured out that I could draw on myself and make it stay, when I could do that for other people too, I knew that's what I wanted to be.
There is no one direct cause for mental illness, rather it's a combination of factors. So there are biological roots as well as social and psychological. So yes, the chemicals in the brain are misfiring. They're not acting in a way that someone whose mental health is well would be responding. There are also the psychological roots as far as childhood trauma, abuse, neglect, post-traumatic stress, all these factors, as well as the social ones, being bullied, not having a strong social support, all these factors play into someone developing mental illness.
I remember it was one day, it was a couple of years after our daughter was born. We had a hard birth with her, and it was just after everything was. We kind of knew everything was fine, that she was out of the woods. I came home from work one day and just had a conversation with my wife, and I just kind of broke down. It was tough. It was, I couldn't explain it to her. I couldn't explain why I felt the way I did. I felt sad for no reason. And I remember I came home and just said I need to talk to somebody, because it was tough. So I try to think back of when I started feeling depressed, and it's sort of, I think it runs in our family a little bit. To pinpoint a time where I knew, or if there's a cause and effect, I certainly don't. I don't want to put this on how my daughter was born. It was, it's sort of, I don't think it's a cause and effect. There's no reason for it. I think it's something you just deal with, and it pops up. And at the time, I didn't know how to deal with it, right? For so many for a couple of years, I tried to be strong because I wanted to make sure that, you know, my wife was okay, my daughter was okay, and, you know, there was always sort of something kind of coming up, and we needed to, you know, hang on and make sure that everything was okay with her, with both of them. And once we kind of got out of the woods, I guess I kind of felt like I could let my guard down a little bit, and I think when I did that, it kind of all came up to the surface.
I was diagnosed with depression at the age, I was finally diagnosed, I think at 14, but it began manifesting, I think, as young as 11. I've also got social anxiety. My parents divorced when I was 8. There was a lot of anger and resentment and the inability to understand what was going on. I didn't really have a stable home life. I switched between parents every 2 weeks. Definitely felt like there wasn't a lot of control, like personal control going on there. So that really reinforced a lot of negative feelings, I guess. There's also a history of depression in my family on my mother's side, especially. I didn't really talk to anybody about it. I'm an only child, so I very much internalize a lot of my thoughts and feelings. I started cutting at the age of 11, which was, I don't know how it popped into my head that this was the thing to do when stressed. Because it's not like I saw somebody do it or heard about it or anything like that. Just that feeling of, I guess, powerlessness and sadness was like a way of taking back control, giving myself that kind of release of tension.
I had several miscarriages, and I was in my, I was 40, and I had, I think 2 or 3 miscarriages in about a 12-month period. And I actually thought I had mono. I went to my doctor and I said, you know, I can't follow transactions at work anymore. I'm isolating, I'm closing my door, I don't want to talk to people. Very not normal for me, very uncharacteristic, and just coming home exhausted. So I went to my GP thinking he's going to say, oh no, you've got mono, that's why you're so tired and foggy and everything. And he said, no, you've got postpartum depression. Oh, and I started rattling off all the things that were going on. And I said, how can I have postpartum depression? I haven't had a baby, I've had miscarriages, right? So I had this completely bizarre misconception about PPD. And he took me off work right away because I was quite, my mental health had deteriorated to that point where I needed to be off work. And then 2013, if you looked at the top 10 stress list, I think I had pretty much everything happen except death in the family. I got married, we had the flood hit, I had moved all my stuff into the basement of the new house that we were moving into because the main floor hadn't been finished yet, so we had 6 feet of sewage in the basement, and so I lost pretty much everything that I owned. There was a lot of financial stress, splitting a family, because we had because I'd lost everything in the flood. I had no furniture, we didn't have any appliances, we were kind of living like we were camping in this beautiful house, and the world kind of came crashing in probably about 6 months after the flood. And this time I think I knew, in retrospect, that something was wrong. And because I was starting to have the similar sorts of symptoms as the first time, where I was having a lot of just fatigue, extreme fatigue, and Again, having difficulties at work and then dealing with stress of insurance companies, et cetera, et cetera. So it was tough, and the doctor said he diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress and the generalized anxiety disorder, which were sort of new for me.
As a teen, I was pretty vulnerable. I was very gullible. I didn't really have a whole lot of experiences because I lived a very sheltered childhood. Didn't have a whole range of experiences that other people did. I didn't really go out and play with other kids when I was small. I was very isolated from a very young age. So when I got into that, 13, 14 years old, I guess I went a little bit wild with everything, and yeah, I decided to experience a lot of different things, and I didn't really know what I was getting myself into a lot of the time. I just kind of went with things, but I wouldn't necessarily call it peer pressure at the time. I just was very curious, and I'd lived such a sheltered life for such a long time. I kind of broke out of my shell. So I started smoking pot, smoking marijuana, and I did that sort of in junior high, so the end of junior high, grade 9. I started smoking pot on a regular basis, and then by grade 10 it was on a daily basis. I also started getting into prescription pills, a lot of the uppers like Dexedrine, Ritalin, and some of the other downers like morphine and oxy, things like that. And I dabbled in cocaine and other drugs like that, and did a lot of ecstasy as well, and drank. That was a huge coping mechanism for me. When it first started, I wasn't really too sure what I was getting myself into, and then as it went on, it was an escape from reality. And I dropped out of high school eventually, and I didn't talk to anybody for a really long time, and so definitely the isolation was a really big part of my depression at the time.
For the most part, depression. I do have anxiety, mainly in high pressure situations. I kind of get a little overwhelmed and antsy, I guess. Oh, it started way back. Longer than the teens. I was like, my parents would move a lot. Like my grade 3 year, I was in about 4 different schools, 4 different towns. I was continuously the new kid in school. I went through a lot of troubles and fights and bullying, and you name it, it got bad. And by the time I was in high school, they finally just left me be in that high school and not move around, thank God. But again, it was like all the bullying and all the harassment, and I won't just receive it from the school or the students, but I would also get a little bit of the mental aspect at my own home. Pretty much my dad has a kind of a mental disease where it kind of affects his brain waves, so he would snap and get angry just as fast as he was calm. I was pretty much his go-to on that one, where I tried to make it be so he would stay off of my mom's radar or my younger sisters or whatnot, and take the burden myself. And that's pretty much where the drug play kind of came in to numb everything around me.
We all experience bad days, so we will be sad, we will get angry, lose our temper. A person who's mentally well will be able to deal with those life stressors. But with mental illness or depression, for example, a person just isn't able to function. Suicide is one of the major impacts of not getting treatment, of not being heard by medical professionals. Sometimes it's the darkness overtakes a person, and it's almost like the person is walking through a tunnel, and they're unable to see or hear or remember the loved ones that they have in their life. The darkness just takes them over, and people complete suicide not because they want to die, but because they want that pain to stop.
People are complex, therefore suicide is complex. And what brings somebody to a point of crisis where they would consider suicide is individual. It's different for every single person. Suicide is classified as both a public health concern and a mental health concern. On the public health concern, we're looking at populations, different demographics of people. On the mental health concern level, we're looking at individuals. So what we typically say is that 90% of suicides can be attributed to a mental health concern, whether that's depression, addiction, or a diagnosable, if you will, mental illness. However, we're hardwired to live. Inside us, we want to live. And so for people to consider suicide, something is going on. They're experiencing something that has brought them to a point of crisis.
I've been suicidal on and off throughout my life, I would say, since I was about 7. Definitely at that time when I was 20 years old, I had everything pretty planned out and pretty set in stone, and I don't know, maybe because I'm really stubborn, I figured I'd give something else a go. And like I said, I'd never attempted to reach out for help before, so this was my final attempt to do something, and if it worked, it worked. If it didn't, it didn't, was my mentality at the time. But I'm glad that it worked, because I'm still here.
Boy, that's a really hard thing to admit, because there are times when you don't want to say that. You don't want to say, this isn't me. I'm not that. But there are times when you think that, yeah, maybe everyone would be better off without me. And it's not logical, it doesn't make sense, but sometimes that's the way you feel. I think with depression, logically you want to try to find something wrong. You want to find a reason for it. You want to find, well, I can't just be feeling this way because it's just the way I feel. There's no reason for it. So you look for things, and sometimes you look in the wrong places for things, and sometimes you look inward too much, and it makes you think that you're not good enough. It makes you think that people would be better off without you, and that's a tough thing to admit, There's more self-doubt when you deal with this stuff than I guess than most people realize.
At the age of 14, I attempted suicide for the first time. That's when I was diagnosed. Let's see. I tried an absolute plethora of treatments, therapies, medications. I spent a lot of time bouncing in and out of hospitals because I cannot remember how many suicide attempts I had between the ages of 14 and 18. There were a lot. I didn't really realize that there was anything beyond that bottomless pit of despair that I carried with me. All the medications I tried didn't really work at that point in time. I'm not sure if it was just my brain wasn't fully developed at that point in time, that it wasn't able to utilize all of the effects of the medication. And again, I didn't want to get better at that point in time. I didn't see a reason for it.
It depends on the illness that a person has. There are different treatment regimes that work more effectively with certain illnesses.
Medication was a huge problem. I had been on medication, and they radically changed my medication in the very early stages, and I did not respond well at all. And in fact that's when I really started having anxiety attacks and panic attacks as well. And it was, then they just kept heaping on more medication. I'm very pro-medication, but what I went through from a medication perspective was horrible. There's just no other way to say it. And I had to actually go into hospital for a medically supervised withdrawal to get off some of the medication they had put me on. And then they transitioned me to this other one, took me off everything else, and it was like, oh, great, okay. Literally after probably 12, 14 months of real struggle, it was within 2 months I felt dramatically improved. So yeah, I mean, it's something that I don't view any different from, diabetic having to take insulin or somebody with a heart problem having to take some kind of medication. It's just, it's an illness just like any other kind of illness that needs to be managed.
I didn't really go the traditional way like most people, where they went to their doctor and kind of talked and did the pills and whatnot. I tried to keep it all in and do it the only way I knew how at the time, which is non-legal type drugs. I spent until I was 19 off and on various things and whatnot. It wasn't until late 1920 that I actually came up and breathed the fresh air type deal and realized what I was doing wasn't productive. I tried at one point, it was my grade 11 or early 12, I was writing poems. They weren't really nice poems. Back then it was the whole shootings in schools and all that on the news, like everywhere. It was the first event of it. And I wrote something similar to it and kind of put myself into the seat of it, just to express myself without doing. I prefer not to do the part. It got around to one of the kids in my class, which threw me into the principal's eye view finally. They sent me to a counselor, off-campus counselor. She put me on medications and whatnot, and once they started giving me tremors and whatnot, it became an issue, like where it was, well, you're just looking for attention. You're not really sick. You're not really anything. Just looking for attention. To the extent where I couldn't focus on my own schooling anymore. My grades were slipping majorly. And they ended up pulling me and my mother into the office and saying, okay, enough's enough. She's gonna fail this year as is. So they kind of cut their ties and let me go. I have not took any medications. I do still smoke a little bit of weed here and there, but it's mainly just to calm the mind and sleep at night. But besides that, I keep trying to keep my mindset in the positive factor and not look at the negative end of things. It does sneak up on me sometimes, but I found a method to try and work through my problems without trying to do the medicated. Eventually, if it does get any worse, there would be going into it.
I was on medication for a while, and that helped at the time. I think I needed it at the time. It helped me realize, gave me a feeling of how I'm supposed to feel, how quote unquote normal people feel. What true happiness feels like again. And it's not that we didn't have happy moments. Obviously, like I said, I've got a beautiful daughter, and there's lots of happy moments, certainly more than bad moments, but it was almost like just a refresher, reminder. Yeah, you can have a normal life. You don't have to be depressed all the time. But then I wanted to, for my own reasons, I kind of wanted to wean off the medication, and so I did after a couple of years. And I got to watch it. I got to control it. And like I said, if I'm having a down day or a down cycle, we call it, just realize it and talk it out with my wife and daughter, Christine Kennedy. They understand. It's no different than if I had a heart disease, I'd deal with it.
So I got into treatment when I was 20 years old. I started out by calling Access Mental Health and finding out how I could get referred to get services. And that's something I had never done before. I had been in therapy, sort of mandated by my school and my parents back in high school. But that never went anywhere because I didn't want to be there and I kind of just wanted to get it all over with. But this time was very different because I was reaching out and asking for help myself. Got a psychologist and started therapy, and I did individual therapy for a bit and then did group therapy, and then I did a lot of group therapy. I was in group therapy for almost 9 months continuously. Today I don't receive any formal kinds of treatments. I did take medication sort of at the height of my illness, on and off for a few years, but I currently don't take anything and I'm not in therapy.
When I was either 18 and a half or 19. I was not on medications at that point in time. This is not something that is going to be necessarily seen as positive in the wider societal norms, I guess. But I had a friend feed me ecstasy. And it was the first time that had ever happened to me. And it's sort of, because my body wasn't necessarily producing a lot of serotonin and dopamine, it sort of unlocked that. And I understood that that black pit of despair I was feeling was not what was necessarily, it wasn't the be all and end all. There was things beyond it. And it sort of gave me almost a perspective of a realization that that positivity was a part of most people's lives, their daily routines. And I realized that at that point in time, there was something wrong with my brain chemicals, essentially. And I realized at that point in time, I needed to pursue that. I needed to fix my life, fix my brain somehow, so I could integrate that into my daily life. So I talked to my doctor, told her what was going on. It took a little bit of playing with the dosages and what medications, or different kinds of medications rather, to finally find a cocktail that worked. But I remember I think it was within my first week or two of the medication, just feeling like there was a huge weight lifted off of my shoulders and I could breathe for once. Just realizing that I could have that happiness. Like I said, it was like seeing a little spot of sunlight at the end of a dark, dark tunnel.
A lot of mindfulness techniques are being used to help those struggling with this, trying to pull the person back into the moment and not get so overwhelmed by everything going on around them, because it can feel like your mind is just running like on a hamster wheel and you can't catch your breath.
That's just really critical to get regular exercise. For me, just walking, I do a lot of yoga, mind-body types of exercise. And then, engaging. One of the biggest challenges is that you want to isolate and, just crawl into bed and not do anything, not see people. So really making sure that I do have a strong social circle and get out and, reach out to people. It's really humbling to ask for help. It's very humbling. Here I go again. Especially when you're the one who's usually the helper. What I've come to appreciate is that it's a gift to ask for help.
A big piece for me is I do rely a lot on sort of therapy techniques that I learned in therapy. Just having that awareness that something's going on in the first place. That's kind of where it starts, and not pushing it to the side. Dealing with my emotions is a big one. So having the sort of foresight to deal with the emotion appropriately sounds simple enough, but it's quite difficult because when you're in a heated situation, the last thing you want to do is pay attention to what you're feeling. So again, those are things that I'd learned in the past that I sort of bring about today. And lately I've been doing a lot of cooking, and when the weather's nice, going out for walks is something that I find helps me. Listening to music, adult coloring books, I love them. You know, just different activities like that. Sometimes sort of the best you can do is distract yourself in the moment from something that's going on, and then come back to it later on.
So when I moved to Calgary, I spent a lot of time by myself. Art really helped me through that. It really helped me kind of fill the days, you know. I found that that art really took a place in there that to help me just help me keep a balance. And it's the stuff that I've been doing now, the type of work I've been doing now is more, I'd say, dynamic. And I think it really reflects the stress relief. So it's a lot of throwing paint on a canvas. It's like I said, it's not, I don't like, it's not passive art. So you look at it, and I think it brings up feelings in you. I feel a lot when I look at the paintings when they're done. I'm really proud of what's on the canvas now. I think it reflects more of what I'm feeling and what I want to be as an artist. It's more of the evolution, I think, of where I want to be.
Even though we're in 2016, there is still so much stigma around mental illness. And that's the hard part for me, because if someone has a mental illness, it is no different than getting cancer. But yet, the stigma for those around the person with the illness, you'll hear things like, oh, he's just crazy. Or if someone is depressed, well, why can't he just pick himself up, put one foot in front of the other, and get out of bed? So there is a lack of understanding.
Certainly there was a lot of stigma. I remember at school, even amongst the teachers, like, things are supposed to remain confidential, but somehow everybody knew. And there's also the fear, and I hadn't really thought about this at first, but as I've gone through my professional career, there's always potential stigma when you speak out and when you're public about your story and your issues. People are going to see it. The response I've received from everyone, to my face anyway, has been overwhelmingly positive, but I don't know what people say when I'm not there, so stigma does exist.
I think you have to realize that while there certainly is a stigma around it, I think you have to talk about it. I think you have to put it out there and let people realize that it's okay to talk about this sort of thing. You're not different, you're not weird, you're not, less of a person because you deal with depression. It's not a judgment of character, it's not a failure in character, it's a failure in chemistry.
Our system sometimes can be very complicated as to how to access the help. If you're the one trying to reach out and you're the one struggling with the illness, it can be very overwhelming.
We are seeing momentum in mental health these days that we've never seen. More people being willing to come out of the shadows and tell their stories, and more people understanding that 1 in 5 Canadians will experience a mental health challenge at some point in their lives, and the other 4 of us are caring for the 1. It affects everybody, and suicide is the same way. It affects far more people than most people realize. More Albertans die by suicide every year than in fatal car collisions. So more than 500 Albertans die by suicide every year, whereas fatal car collisions is about in the 300s.
I heard about Project Semicolon 2 years ago, and it was the first I'd heard of it is somebody came in for a semicolon tattoo, and I was like, I don't really get it. Can you explain this to me? And her explanation was that this is my story. This is where the sentence could have ended, but didn't. This is where I could have died, but I didn't. And displaying the semicolon is just sort of like a really quiet acknowledgement that I support the awareness and the treatment and the acknowledgement of mental health and mental illnesses as being real and being valid. You know, it's just when you're feeling sad or depressed or suicidal, you look around and you feel so isolated, so separate from everybody else. And knowing that so many people suffer from mental illnesses and depression and anxiety, and seeing just the little semicolon on somebody's wrist or wherever, just looking at that and knowing, hey, I'm not alone. You know, nothing has to be said. It can just be that smile from across the room. It just can make all the difference in the world. That quiet little mark of support and understanding.
I had a young gentleman that I used to work with that I recently found out passed away from suicide. Between that and, again, my own issues and my husband and even the people at my shop, the artists, hearing bits and pieces of their story, I feel like it's something to support them and support what I believe and what I think. It's more like a connection to everyone.
I think it's hugely important as adults that we talk about our own experiences with our children so that they don't feel shame and they feel empowered and that they can see that there's resources and things that we can do to get better. In sharing our stories, it seems to open a door to other people to share our stories.
I was hesitant to go into group therapy because I was like, I don't want to share my experiences with others. That's completely pointless, was sort of my train of thought at that time. And then going into group therapy, I realized that there was so many other people with very similar experiences, and we shared a commonality. We might have had different diagnoses, we were different ages, different cultural backgrounds, all kinds of differences, but we all had something in common as well. And from that point on, I sort of discovered the power of sharing your story. And for me, one of the things that helped me throughout recovery was knowing that I wasn't alone and that this is something that impacts a lot of people. And so I feel the need to share my experiences and to let other people know that there is hope and that you can sort of come from this mess and rise above it and, you know, live the life that you want to lead.
I want Kenny to know that it's, excuse me, it's okay to talk about anything, talk about this. You know, she still sees me as she still sees me as her hero, you know, as toughest man on earth. I want to know that there's more to being strong than just being physically strong and, you know, stoic all the time. Sometimes strength comes from talking about things. And I want her to know that. I want her to know that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to put your trust in other people, you know? But not just for her. If by me putting this story out there, it makes people realize that, maybe I can talk about it. Maybe there's someone I can talk to. I don't have to do this alone. There are other people that are feeling exactly the same way that I do. I think if we can help end the stigma, why wouldn't I do this? You can talk about it. You can talk about anything. Don't clam up. Don't think you're suffering alone.
Don't give up. There is hope, and just because you have a mental illness, it doesn't have to be the end of your life. There are ways to manage, there are ways to cope, and you can be happy.
But it gets better. Whatever you're feeling is just in that moment. Remember that beyond that moment, there's so much more. There's so much potential for happiness.
The more we talk about it, I think someday people will go, why was this ever even an issue? Like, that would be my hope.
People with mental illnesses can lead very productive, successful lives. So just because you receive that diagnosis, you are not that diagnosis. You are still you, and you still have the power and the ability to live a full life. Recovery is hard work, but it's worth it.
I see my future getting brighter and brighter every day, or even every year. I just feel like I've come a long way compared to where I was before.
I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. I want to get better as an artist. I want to be able to improve my skills, to be able to take my vision and put it on somebody's skin, to be able to take their ideas and be able to more efficiently and more effectively translate these positive feelings into images that people will carry with them forever. Beyond improving as an artist and being able to provide a better service for the people that I work on, I'm not that ambitious. I just want to live my life, experience my day-to-day contentment.
Hopes for my future to, just focus right now is really the next few years with Lucy. She'll be going through junior high and high school, so those will be challenging and hopefully rewarding years. So to really be there for her, to really get back into my career, and that's very rewarding for me and really adds a lot of stability. And I think these kind of life experiences make me better at what I do, because everybody experiences some kind of pain, catastrophe, illness in their life, whether it's mental illness, a loved one who has mental illness, or cancer, whatever it is. So having been through stuff, I think makes all of us better human beings when we engage with others who are going through difficult times.
I didn't think I'd make it this far. I never planned. I was never a big planner for the future. I kind of lived one day at a time. But just for today, I'll do this and get through this. But now that I'm faced with a future, a promising future, I think there's a lot of different possibilities and directions I can go in. Obviously, my main sort of passion and goal is to work in mental health. And so that's where I'm looking towards now.
I want to keep chasing this dream of owning my own business and being an HSE professional. I love doing what I do. I also would love to think that the art could go somewhere. I want to grow old with my wife. I want to walk my daughters down the aisle. I want to see how amazing she's going to be. Such a hard start. She's fighting from right from the beginning. and I just think she's going to change the world, and I can't wait to see that, you know. So that's what, in the darkest of days, that's what keeps me going. I want to see what she's going to do. She's amazing. She teaches me more every day than anybody else ever has. Just the things that she says, the perspectives that she has already. I mean, I know she's 7, but she has this empathy and this old soul about her that she gets it. You know, she gets the way things should be. You know, she's such a kind, innocent little thing. To be able to learn from her perspectives, you know, to see life through her eyes, and it's a pretty beautiful world out there, you know, and it really helps a lot.